What's going on, everyone? Welcome in to another episode of Wildly Informed. I'm your host, Brett Marshall, alongside my pal, Isha Jerome. Lots to get to tonight. The Wild, obviously, coming off arguably probably their worst game of the season. So we'll talk a little bit about some bad things, but again, we'll try to keep the focus to all of that. Got to check in with Isha, see how you're doing. How's it going tonight, my friend?
Good, man. Good. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about. Because coming off, I would say the most brutal loss of the season thus far for the Minnesota Wild. And I don't want to be one of those fans. I don't want to be one of those podcasts that like just goes full doom and gloom after losing one game when, you know, there were some good points in that game, but I think the areas in which the Wild struggled raised some good questions that we're going to dive into on this show as well.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like that LA game was kind of the culmination of like, all right, what if everything that's gone right to start the year suddenly goes wrong and kind of all implodes at once? And I think that's kind of what we saw.
It kind of all imploded in one period too, to be honest.
True,
like you could say like, yeah, maybe the second period wasn't as strong, but like the first and second period, like that was all Minnesota. And then it was just like, well, I put it this way, until that LA power play.
Yeah.
Which was like right at the, it was like what, 4 minutes left to the second. But like until then, like that was the Wild's game to lose. And yep, they blew it.
Yeah. Especially embarrassing. Like you had that team again, like the Toronto game, second of a back-to-back. And like, you just let them kind of walk all over you. Like what, I don't know. It was a little bit discouraging, but you know, we've seen this team bounce back from some games before. So I'm confident that they will. Like, I don't think it was a sign of things to come.
No, the only second regulation loss for this team all year as well too. So, and again, coming off a crazy road trip, like they're allowed to have a mulligan every now and then in an 82 game season, especially with with just how grueling the schedule's been thus far. But what do we got coming up on the show here today?
Yeah, we got some interesting things to talk about today. So for the analytics agenda, we'll just do kind of a really brief kind of like crash course quickly into PCS and player cards. I won't go through like everything in there. We'll just kind of talk about kind of what they show. And then if you want to read more about it, you can, because there's like a lot of info in there. I don't want to sit there and go through like the weight of every stat in there. But
we've got some examples for you guys who are watching too on YouTube.
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk a little about the special teams, kind of just how bad they've been. Like, do we think it's is it more of an anomaly? Like, are they doing the right things, just getting unlucky? Or is it, nope, they're bad and doing things poorly? We'll talk a little bit about Kirill Kaprizov. No points in his last two games, but prior to that, just on a heater that I think is worth acknowledging. And then in the Puck Your Opinion section, we'll talk a little bit about the third pair. And then also about Yakov Trenin, who potentially could be scratched, if not next game, sometime on this upcoming road trip.
I feel like the media, the national media, or I should just say north and south of the Canadian border have jinxed it, because like it was like in regards to Kaprizov, because it was like when he was absolutely buzzing and he was on like multi-game point streak and just and not to say that he isn't right now, but it was like everyone was talking about best player in the league out of the gate, like his contract's gonna be crazy, he's so good, this and that, and then it's just like then slows down for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, maybe the jinx will pass on to Martin Necas now, who I learned today via social media has 17 points in his last 7 games, which is, I think, kind of similar to the run Kaprizov was. I don't know what his exact total was over that multi-point streak, but I think it was right.
I think it was 18 for Kaprizov, so it's pretty damn close.
It's pretty similar. So
yeah, no, but in all seriousness, even in the LA loss, like the first line looked good. The Toronto game first line looked good. Like, I don't know. I'm just so happy to see like Rossi basically solidify himself as the first line center now. And it's just like, all right, we have this line down.
Yeah, just has to stay out of the box now.
yeah, that's true. But
because they're allergic to killing the penalties that he takes for some reason. So, but we'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and let's be honest, some of them just bad kind of puck luck.
Yeah.
Some of them Yeah, he's got a little tenacity to his game. But anyways, let's get to the first segment of the show, the analytics agenda.
All right, so today for the analytics agenda, we will be talking about PCS, which stands for Player Contribution Score. This is a metric I don't want to say that I developed from scratch. It was taken with heavy inspiration from Dom Luszczyszyn's game score, Dom of The Athletic. I just kind of took it to like another step. So his game score, like the biggest difference between what I put out and what you might see from like hockey stat cards and like Dom's models and stuff are he doesn't really factor in a lot of special teams into his play, and not a lot of like the extracurriculars like shots, hits, blocks, those types of things. So my basically just kind of, it took a lot of inspiration, a lot of the same weights, calculations, a lot of the stuff that goes into his game score, and then just kind of added onto it a little bit more. So still not something I think is perfectly refined. Like I think there's still ways I could make defense better, ways I could improve the penalty kill. But I think overall it gives people a pretty good baseline of kind of how a player performed and contributed to a win in a certain game, which is where the name Player Contribution Score comes from. It's his contributions to the game. So the way I break it up, and like it's meant to really be a helpful visual tool after a game to be like, hey, did the analytics match the eye test? And there's been a couple, like most instances this year, I feel like a lot of times it's like, yeah, that has backed up. We'll talk a little bit about when we get to like one of the summary pages. Like Khusnutdinov is one I get questions on constantly as to why his score looks not as good as maybe what the eye test showed. We'll talk about maybe why that can be. I think that might be a little bit more akin to the way the model produces the score versus how he's actually playing. But the way I break this down is kind of into 5 different boxes. So you can see that the headings in each section, like individual contributions is number 1. And that's like your very basic, like counting stats. So goals, assists, second assists, individual shot attempts, individual high danger shots, and then individual expected goals. So what did that player do on his own to like help individually contribute to the win? And then basically the way all this stuff factors into that final score is each of these goals has a weight or like a multiplier. So like I think on here, I don't think I show it yet, but further down, I think I talk about what it is. Like a goal, for example, is worth 0.8 points in my model. So if they score a goal, 0.8 is going to go into that player contribution score. And then depending on the rest of the things that happen throughout the game, whether it's attempts or goals against or expected goals or corsi, like more can be added and subtracted to kind of put out that final score. So the next box, game flow contribution. So just like kind of what did the player do that kind of contributed to the flow of the game? So how many shots did they, how many shots on goal? How many hits did they throw? Blocks? Did they draw or take penalties? Like what was their plus minus in that game? Those kinds of things are in that box. And then, of course, we have special teams. So just what did that players look like on the special teams? So those boxes, time on ice. And then for power play, it's did you have any points? And then I decided to include kind of expected goals as the other kind of mark there. And that's because, like, to me, like you can a power play one can look like, hey, they went 3 for 5. They scored 3 times. That's awesome. But there are sometimes nights where, God, I mean, the power play maybe goes 0 for 4. Maybe they racked up 1.5 expected goals, where they racked up a ton of shots and just ran into a hot goalie. I think it's important to call that out, because if a team does that over and over and over again, they're not going to hit a hot goalie every night. And then similar to the PK, time on ice, if you allowed goals against and expected goals against. So like there could be, hey, if you're out on the kill and you had to kill 6 penalties in a game, but you only allowed half of an expected goal against on those 6 opportunities, that's worth noting. So that was kind of rationale for what I included in there. And then the last 2 boxes there are just visuals of shot attempts or corsi and expected goals, which we've talked at length about. So just showing what those players' on ice numbers were in that game. And that final box is what their contribution score was to that game, and then where that ranked among the team. So, and that's also included for all the shot attempts and expected goals, where that ranked among the rest of the forwards, 1st through 12th, when they run 12 forwards. So that's kind of what goes into that. I really enjoyed doing these. Like I always it's always exciting after a game. I was like, oh, I wonder like who the best player was, or like, oh man, they really talked up so-and-so on the broadcast. I wonder if the numbers actually kind of back it up. So this is kind of what my summary looks like each night. So you get kind of a quick snapshot of all the players on the ice, from the forward groups, the defensive pairings, the goaltending, and then also in that bottom left corner, I also have my line stat. So that's how each line performed overall. So it'll include their goals for and against at 5-on-5, their corsi share, and their expected goal share. Same thing with the defensive pair. So just a quick snapshot to look at how you can look at how an individual player did, but also how their line did at 5-on-5. And then in that top left corner, just kind of the summary of the teams as a whole, just kind of the different shares of the events in the game. So it's literally meant to just be a really good visual tool. And then the last chart is just that breakdown. So this just shows kind of what factors most played into their score. So in this example, Jared Spurgeon had really awesome 5v5 numbers in that Toronto game. Like him and Brodin, excuse me, I think out attempted Toronto like 25-2, outshot him 13 rip. And then their expected goal share was like a 98%. So their 5-on-5 play really drove their score because they just dominated possession. That's kind of what that chart shows there. So to me, it's just a really good way to tell people kind of, here's a quick snapshot analytics in a way that makes them hopefully really easily digestible, makes a little bit of sense. And then the last thing on there, I think that people ask questions about, is the color coding. This is just based on, I took a sample set of data. I believe it was from 2018 to like 2022 or something, I think. And basically just looked at what's called standard deviation. So it's a statistical method of like, where did most of the games fall? So and it falls in like percentiles and different things like that. And it's basically like the color is, the deeper the blue, the more of a rare type of game that is, the darker the red. The darker the blue in a good direction, the darker the red. In an average direction, those lighter blues and lighter reds tend to be more of like an average to like typical game for most players. So that's what PCS is. If you want to learn more about it, kind of how everything's weighted, there is a link on my Medium page, which is just called Minnesota Wild Player Cards and PCS Model Explained. It'll take you about 10 minutes to read through it, but it'll walk through box by box what everything is. It'll tell you all the weights of everything, why things are weighted a certain way. Like the big question when people do read it is, why is expected goals against weighted so much more heavily than expected goals? And it's because expected goals against is about one of the two ways we have to measure defense aside from goals against. So it plays a heavier weight when you don't defend well. So yeah, pretty much that.
There you go. I've also linked it in the live chat if you're watching on YouTube, and it's as always in the description of each of these videos and the podcast. I've also linked the X/Twitter post where Brett actually provided all those cards running down the Leafs game that we use as an example too, if you guys want to check that out as well. Well, let's hover around this topic still of analytics and apply it to the Minnesota Wild special teams right now, Brett, or lack thereof, because I don't know about you, but I can't find them.
Yeah, it's been really weird because I felt like 2 weeks ago we were talking about like, oh, it seems like the special teams are improving. The power play looks good. The penalty kill looks like it's made improvements. And then it seems like we jinxed it and everything just kind of like fell apart. Like in especially these last 4 games, 4.5 games, even if you want to expand it a little bit further. But since October 29th, that's the last 4 games, they have the worst power play in the NHL, 0 goals in the last 14 attempts. They've had the 5th most power play time in that stretch. Haven't scored on the power play since like the second period of the Philadelphia game back on October 26th. The thing I wanted to call out here is like between the two special teams, this is probably the one I'm a little bit less worried about. The numbers show that they have 3.33 expected goals in that span. So we talked earlier about running into a hot goaltender. And I think like a little bit of that could be true here. Like the numbers suggest they should be about 3 for 14 in this stretch, which is a 21%. So still kind of below that 30% mark that they were hovering around to start the year. So not better. It's not like great, but better. Overall in the year, they've, dropped now to 20%. And kind of the reason I think a lot of this is happening is there's kind of like 4 things for me that kind of stick out. One being they're just not getting a lot of dangerous chances. I think there's a lot of like overpassing, and it comes to where they're forcing pucks, and there's just like a straight lack of dangerous chances. They've only had 8 high danger opportunities in the last 4 games in the power play. Like the power play, like you should be getting probably at least 1 on every single power play attempt. Like you should have 1 slot shot at some point right in front of the goalie, or a tip or a redirection or something. And they've only had 8 total in these 14 attempts that they've had. So I think that's one thing to call out. Russo had some pretty good breakdowns in the Athletic as well. So, and the things he echoed in there, I think were similar things to I've seen as well. Like there's just kind of this poor rush attack and regrouping. I think teams have kind of figured out like what the Wild strategy in the neutral zone is with the Brock Faber drop pass. They started to pressure him more. They're forcing more turnovers before they even get into the zone. And then again, I think once they do get in the zone, it's just a lot of like forced passes and overpassing and passing up shots at points. So I think it's things I think that can be fixed more easily, I think, than what's going on with the penalty kill. And we've seen this penalty kill be successful. Like the expected goals are still there, showing it's not as bad as 0414 might show. Like I think it's one of those things where maybe they just get kind of a weird tip or a puck that goes off a defender's shin pad and ends up in the net just to kind of like spark and give the confidence back. I think it's just players like knowing like, shit, we haven't played very well lately, and how do we get back on track kind of thing. So I think it'll get better, but I think we've seen it, the impact in a game like last night where I think they had 4 power play opportunities to LA's 1. They go for 4, LA goes 1 for 1, and they lose the game 5-1. Not saying, I mean, if you score on all 4 of yours, it's a tie game, which is obviously not realistic, but if you pop 1 or 2 of those in and you look at when in the game those power plays happen, like those could have, tied the game or been go-ahead goals, those types of things. So I think that's what really comes into play.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page in that I'm a little bit more concerned about the PK, especially in the last few games where they keep like collapsing literally like in the same area, and then they're flat-footed, guys are out of positions, or they're overcommitting and they lose their man. There's a lot of open ice and just blatant space where they could have had some zone coverage. So there's no like sound, middle or in between where it's just looked okay. It's either looked like really bad as of late, or like you said, it's looked actually pretty good out of the gates. The power play, I think there can be some adjustments that can just add some extra plays to their playbook, for lack of a better term. We're still early. They have been moving the puck really, really well. And once they're able to set up, like I've actually liked how the power play has looked again on the road trip. But recently, I think you said it perfect there. That draw pass to Faber, that has been working for them for a while. Now that there was tape on it, now the teams are planning for it. It's like, okay, they have to adjust. And there's been moments where like Boldy's gotten some good looks. Yeah, Kaprizov has worked his magic, has found some open ice, has created a chance or two, but it really just wasn't as like concerning is the wrong word, but it hasn't been as like risky. And I have had less confidence in it versus the start of the season.
Yeah, and then just like transition, like the penalty kill, like to your point, like the thing that makes it concerning is like the errors they're making are like penalty killing 101 errors. Like I don't want to pretend to know that I understand the speed and skill of an NHL power play, but what I can say is that I did play hockey for 14 years, all the way up through high school. I played 3 years on varsity. I went to some clinics that are like eventually feed into like the national development program. Like I've played against, like the teams I played on weren't very good. I played against a lot of really good teams. And like part of my game I always prided myself in was my penalty killing because I was good at it. And to me, it's pretty easy to be good on the penalty kill. Like it's all about positioning and knowing when to attack, when not to. And like basically you're always, if it's a 5-on-4 penalty kill, there's going to be 2 formations you're going to be in. And it's completely dependent on what the other team is doing, not what you think you're better at. If the team is running an umbrella, which is going to be 2 players on the wing, a guy up high, probably like that's going to be like your Roman Yosis, those heavy slap shot type players. You're going to have 2 guys kind of in front of the net, one right in front of the goalie, and then one kind of in the middle slot in what some might call like a bumper position. So if you kind of draw those lines together, it kind of looks like an umbrella. The way you defend that is you go what's called a diamond. So you have one guy covering the guy up front, you have your wings at the dots, and you have another guy up top. And then the other thing you can do is a box. This is traditionally used more to defend what's called an overload, and that's going to be more where a team is playing more behind the net and on the wing versus up top and on the wing. So you just kind of shift, and then you're using your two players on the strong side to prevent seam passes from going across. And I think where the Wild really struggles when they have to go into the box is I think they stay in the diamond too much, and it opens up all these passing lanes, and then they attack too early, and it just leaves guys wide open, and then guys scramble to cover. Everyone's out of position. there's a seam pass that goes across. It's a one-timer like last night from Fiala, and it's in the back of the net. Like, it's a lot of
they just collapse right into the slot, and it's like, dude, it doesn't take rocket appliances to know that you have 4 guys right in the slot, pretty much shoulder to shoulder. Like, there's no there's no ice being covered.
Yeah, and the other like glaring thing for me is who's ever like the net front defenseman like constantly lets his guy get behind him, and like all it takes is one puck to get by you, and that guy's either has a free chance to tip the puck, or the goalies who have, for whatever reason, horrible rebound control in the power play. If a rebound pops right out, there's no one on him to get the puck from him, and he's banging in rebounds. Like, to me, that was one of the biggest issues last year. It's gotten a little bit better, but it's still, to me, is like a glaring issue of like, you need to put yourself between the goalie and the attacking player, because now it has to go through the other player and then go through you, and not just get through. Like, defending the center of the slot when there's nobody standing there is worthless. Like, if they want to put a guy in the high slot and not in front of the net, then you can cover it in the high slot. But they're not putting people there. They're putting people right in front. He's taking away Gustafsson. They're Fleury's eyes. Like, he's not seeing pucks. Like, you can't let a guy stand on the doorstep on a power play. You just can't. And they do it over and over and over again. It's like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know if they're being taught that, or if they think like, if I'm in front of this guy, I can like swap passes away or whatever. But like, it doesn't work. So,
we're seeing them do the same thing over and over again. That's what's like the biggest play. Whereas like, I'm sure we're going to see different looks on the power play. I'm sure we're going to see them try, different plays and things like that. Whereas the penalty kill, it's like you said, it's 101 basics type of things that they got to polish up.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too, like the forwards, I think are picking the wrong times to attack. Like last night, we saw Boley chase into the corner. Like, the forwards really, under no circumstances, should ever really be going below the dots. And my other thing is, like, when you're defending a power play up top, there's really no reason to go out and chase at the blue line unless the guy's like fumbling the puck, because ideally you want teams to, when we talked about high danger chances, like if they want to sit there and rip slap shots from the top of the circles or like the blue line, let them. Like, it's going to have to go through 6 guys, and that's a much easier save for a goalie to make than a guy shooting it from right between the hash marks, which is what opens up if you chase up top and then get beat. He throws it back down to the wing. They throw it to the middle of the ice. And like, so many times the forwards will creep up. They just throw it down to the guy in the wing. It's a one-touch pass across. And now there's a guy going right down the middle of the ice, or right from a far pass, because there's no one there to take away the seam pass. Like, active stick, like, keep the puck to the outside. Your stick should be taking away the lanes to the middle of the ice and to the net at all times. And just like attack when you think you can get to the puck. If you don't think you can take the puck away, don't attack. I think one area they have gotten better is defending like the attack if teams are coming into the zone. But the problem is they haven't had a lot of chance to do that lately because they're not winning the faceoff.
Well, I was just going to say, and it's good that you, being, the analytics guy on the podcast here, because like straight eye test, it's like 5-on-5, they look good on the faceoff. Penalty kill, same guys taking the draw that are successful 5-on-5, but for some reason, just the stats have just dropped. And I don't know if it's just a confidence thing right now, or I don't know, but it's between the big 3 in Ek, Khusnutdinov, and Gaudreau. Yeah, like Ek's the one I think is like really fascinating because his power play face-off win percentage, I think, is like 58%. And then on the penalty kill, it goes down to 31.3. I want to say there's a rule in the NHL now where the attacking teams can pick, like the team that going on the power play gets to pick the dot that they take the draw on. So obviously they're going to take the center who goes to the preferred side. And as a guy who played center, that does matter. I much preferred taking draws where I could win it with my backhand versus ones where I had to win it with my forehand. So maybe that's part of it. But like, and that's like, okay, then we need to go into practice. We need to work on taking faceoffs. Yeah, but that's one of those things where it's like, okay, in college, sure, I have some sympathy. At this level, it's like, boo-hoo, man. You're getting paid millions of dollars. Like, you can take a faceoff on both sides.
Yeah, and it's not just Ek. Gaudreau is at 37.5%. And Murat Khusnutdinov is 7.
Yeah, it's all 3.
So he's the best. Murat's at 50%. But like, I remember, I think it was last week or the week before, like I literally talked about how important there was like a penalty kill where Murat Khusnutdinov won the faceoff. The Wild cleared the puck out of the zone. And then I think it took the other team almost a minute to get back into the zone because they did a really good job of attacking at the blue line to prevent them getting into the zone, and then sent the puck down like 2 more times. Like, that killed a whole minute. Yeah. Where they didn't have to defend a shot. They didn't have to worry about being in the right position to defend seam passes and when to attack the point. Like, because the teams never got set up. But I think this team's issue is like, once teams are set up, like, it just seems like they're completely lost as to what to do. and they're making it really hard to clear puck. And when they are getting chances to clear, it just feels like they're failing on those clears or like fanning on them or whatever else. So I'm much more worried about the penalty kill. Like this is a lot of the same issues we saw last year. And I think they were like 30th out of 32 last year. They've now allowed 5 goals in their last 9 kills, which if you're doing that math, that means they've allowed more goals than killed penalties in the last 9 attempts. If you go back to that Philly game, they've allowed 6 in the last 11, again, allowing more than what they've killed if you go to 11. 6 of the 9 goals they've allowed this season have come in the last 4 games. And this is despite having the second fewest amount of penalties in that stretch.
Yeah, that's bad.
Like they're being disciplined and it still doesn't even matter. And their penalty kill is second worst in the NHL, only behind Edmonton.
And furthermore, Gustafsson has bailed them out a few times on the penalty as well, making some tremendous saves. So it's like at this point, figure it out, guys, because the goalie's doing his job. 5-on-5 for the most part. You're playing disciplined. Like this is really on you guys at this point.
Yeah, so a lot needs to be done. Hines talked, I think, prior to the LA game about he thought improvements are being made. I don't see it yet, but I mean, if this is going to be a team that makes like any sort of playoff run, like you can win in the playoffs without having a good power play. You can't win the playoffs having a bad penalty kill. You just can't. Yeah. And I think, you look at the way this team wants to win. Like we've talked at length already on this show about how the offense just overall isn't there at 5-on-5. Like they defend really well. Like if they want to grind out 2-1 games, 2-0, 3-1, 3-2, like that's going to come down to being able to prevent goals in the penalty kill. Or if you're giving up 1 a night, you're putting yourself in a hole, especially when the power play is not being able to answer back.
No, yeah, for sure. Well, let's flip the script, go from a little negative to a little positive here and talk about Kirill Kaprizov's hot start, despite not being on the score sheet last night against the LA Kings. If you guys are watching us live here on YouTube, by the way, you can always listen back to the podcast on Friday, wherever you get your podcast from. Just check us out, the Sota Pod feed. But Kaprizov has had an amazing start, and you guys can follow along on Brett's latest vlog here. But I'm almost at a loss of words. You found some words. Mind you, it wasn't the longest blog here to do a small write-up on Kaprizov. He's just been outstanding every single night. And even when he doesn't score, he still looks amazing. We talked about this last week. Even in games where teams have really shut down that first line, he still managed to get a point or two, right? So it was only a matter of time until he was left off the score sheet, despite him and the first line doing everything right, and just the rest of the team not being able to back them up and get some secondary scoring when ultimately all his opportunities, have been shut down.
Yeah, it's just been awesome to watch. Like obviously no points in the last 2 games, but you look at prior to that. So all these stats are previous to the LA game. It did include, I think just the LA game is the only one not included in these. But at the time I wrote my article, he was tied for 14th in NHL among forwards, tied for 14th in goals with 7, tied for second in assists with 14, tied for first with 21 points, tied for first with 12 5-on-5 points, 55th in shots on goal, 5th in individual expected goals. So like, even though maybe the volume isn't there, it's like when he is getting pucks on net, they're from dangerous areas. Like he's taking quality shots, and it's not like 55th is still a pretty good mark to be at in total shots. And that's not adjusted for games played and stuff either. So, and then shot attempts, he was with 80, he was in 11th. So like he's doing all the right things. And then you look at just how much they're leaning on him beyond that, like 17.5 minutes per night at 5-on-5. And then 22, almost like 2 seconds short of 23 minutes per night overall, if you include the power play he's playing as well. So like just unbelievable how much he's out there and like just never showing signs of tiring. They've been efficient too, because like the on ice numbers, and I think we've talked a little bit about this, like they're only controlling 50% of the shot attempts when he's out there. That's 71st in the league among all forwards. 53.5% of the expected goals. That's a pretty good number. 51st though. So it's not like he has these elite possession numbers, but like the chances are so big and they're creating so many passing lanes and scoring opportunities. There's finishing on those chances. So it's just been like the efficiency has been crazy. And you look at like, this was a guy who last year got off to a start and it didn't feel kind of like he had a point per game, but it just felt like, it just didn't feel like he was really on it as much. He only had 3 goals, and he has 7 this year. Granted, 3 of them been empty netters, but like an empty net goal is still important because it kind of puts the dagger in the other team. Like you still have to be able to go out there, be trusted to play defense, find the right time to force a turnover and get the puck into the empty net. So like,
well, and his agent just loves it, every single one of them too. So there you go.
Yeah, and then he had a 7-game point streak of multi-point games. He's had at least 1 point now, I think, in 9 of 12 games this year. Multi-point 8 of those 12. Like, and in the games where he's had multiple points, they're 6-1-1. So it's like, it's not like he had.
It's like, bro, we're just wishing that Trennan gets 20 points in the season, and Kaprizov's already at 21. That's actually. You know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, Trennan, we just see a little bit more offense from you.
That's crazy to actually say that out loud and be like,
right?
Yeah, that's actually kind of true. Yeah,
it's wild.
But like, and I think to me the thing, I mean, it doesn't ring quite as true now with no points in the last 2, but like just the consistency. Like it wasn't like this wasn't 21 points because he had like 5 points in 2 games. It was like
every game it was 1,
2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 2, 2. Like
and honestly, man, he could have gotten one last night too. Like
like there was some post hit and stuff too. Like it's just
there were some chances. Yeah, I think there was. I think there might have been 3 or 4 posts in the game. It might have been 2 apiece or like 2 for the Kings and 1 for the Wild. But yeah, like there were opportunities for him in the first line, and like again with a little bit of puck luck, like in some of the previous games. Where he got that last extra point, that 3rd point on 2 of the night or that 2nd point or whatever, like he could have, because of his efforts in every single game, and especially even in the Kings game, like he definitely could have snuck out with one last night.
I don't know what his pace is now after 12 games, but there was a point where he was on pace for basically 2 points a game. And like, I don't think that's sustainable, but I think we're looking at a guy like, I think 50 goals and 125 points is like, not an outlandish thing in his range of outcomes of what he could.
It's the Kucherov year.
Yeah, like
144, baby.
Like I think people are like, I mean, we've all known in Minnesota since he got here how special this player is, but I think people elsewhere are finally starting to realize like I think I've had 4 or 5 people already from like I don't want to say like rival fan bases, from other fan bases will be like, I tuned into a Wild game tonight and like, wow, Kaprizov's amazing. Okay, I went to the game and I watched Kaprizov live. I'm like, wow, he's amazing. And we're like, yeah,
dude. A lot of people
really
from my second channel, the City Life project that I do fight companions on, and cover mixed martial arts and stuff. Like a lot of the casual hockey fans, more the degenerate gamblers, but the casual hockey fans, they're now like, damn, like Minnesota's really doing good. So they'll start tuning into the games and they're like, oh my God, like this guy's unreal. And it's like, I knew he was Minnesota's best player, but I didn't know he was their best player. And I was like, yeah, he's like top 10 in the league. Like,
yeah, top 10 might be underselling it too. Like he's that good. Yeah. And so like, that's a long-winded way of saying like, do I think he's going to produce at a 2-point per game pace the rest of the year? No, but like digging into the numbers, there isn't a lot there to be like he's like way overachieving. Is he overachieving a little bit? Maybe, but good players are going to do that. Like I think he is an exception to the rule a lot of times, and I think like I don't think like I wouldn't be surprised if he goes on this 2-game drought, and now I think he's feasted in Anaheim. I think his career numbers against the Ducks are crazy. The Sharks are still a young team. Like he eats against those lower competition.
Oh yeah, he's like 3-4 points on Thursday.
Yeah, like I think
at least 3 against the Ducks. Like
like this is a guy who hates to lose, and I think he's gonna. I think he knows he had probably his worst game of the season against LA, and I think he's gonna come back with a fire lit under him. I think 2 points for Kaprizov again the next game. I think is a near lock.
Yeah. We will be covering that one live as well on the channel. So join us for a late one in San Jose, 9:30 start Central Time. Let's go. We'll all stay up together, ladies and gentlemen. We'll keep the vibes and energy levels high. All right. Final segment of the show. And this one's a good one. I mean, we want the chat or if you guys are watching this video on YouTube later after the stream, please comment. We've been getting comments on the videos, so really appreciate it. Maybe we'll like start doing just a segment if we get like 3 or 4 comments, at the end of every stream, and just like go over them if they're questions. But
some good Q&A.
Yeah, you guys let us know. And as always, if you're listening to this on Friday, hit Brett or myself up on social media, or find the video and hit us up on a comment here. But we want to get your guys' opinion on this last topic in our Puck Your Opinion segment.
I just want to say, Puck Your Opinion.
What do we got, Brett?
Yeah, so I got kind of two things I want to talk about. We'll start defensively here. So we've seen kind of a rotating cast of characters kind of moving through the third pair lately between John Merrill, Zach Bogosian, and Declan Chisholm. That door has mostly been revolving for Merrill and Chisholm. It just kind of seems like, it's 1 or 2 for you, and then you're out 1 or 2 for you. But like, I don't think Bogosian, like the big reason why I talked about this is I don't think Bogosian should be exempt from potentially being that odd man out. But I just kind of wanted to take a look at, what have these three done with one another so far this year? Because I think it's like the top 4 has been awesome. Like the Spurgeon Brodini against Toronto, granted on the second of back-to-back, but like they were so dominant in that one. We've already talked in this show, like how like surprisingly impressive Faber and Middleton have been. Like they've continued to just outscore opponents and generally control play. It's this third pairing where like, I don't want to say things have been bad because it's not like they're, you look at last night, the Merrill Bogosian pair had 2 goals against. That was the first 2 goals against they'd allowed all year. So like, I don't want to like, and besides that, like they've only given up like 1 or 2 other ones at 5-on-5. Like, it's like they've been bleeding goals, but it just feels like when they're out there, it's just kind of like boring hockey, which to me for your third pairing is fine. It's what you want. But I just kind of want to look at the numbers and be like, this is a case where my eye test told me that, hey, Bogosian didn't look like he was playing very well. Like the numbers back it up. He's dead last in my PCS model right now on the team. So that like that was part of it. But I'm like, okay, what does he look like with these other guys? So this is kind of how it broke down. For those watching, you can see the graphic on screen. For those listening later on, we just have a graphic up with each of the pairings, their time on ice, what their shot share looks like, Corsi, high dangers, goals for, against, expected goals. And it's a little bit tricky when you're working in small samples. Like we have 12 games and then probably like 3 to 4 games each where these guys have played together. So again, working with small samples, but what this shows me is that Merrill here kind of seems to be the one where defense tends to slip a little bit more. On both the pairings with Merrill, we're looking at a sub 50% goal share and a just above 50% expected goal share. Merrill Bogosian outscored 2-1. Merrill Chisholm have outscored opponents 2-1. And then that last pairing, Bogosian Chisholm, which on paper, given this data set, looks the best, but we have like 30 to 40 minutes less of ice time to compare it to. So, but they have looked a little bit better, maybe a little more offense there with those two. What this exercise did for me is solidified that Chisholm should be the one that stays in the lineup night in, night out. And that last spot more comes down to, would you rather have that be Bogosian or would you rather have it be Merrill? I still don't know which way I lean. It might be, I might lean slightly toward Merrill because the data we have of him with Chisholm is a little bit bigger and it looks okay, but I don't know. It just, and maybe if you're Zach Bogosian too, the hard part is, hey, I had Chisholm on my opposite the other night. Now I got Merrill tonight. I got to figure out, learn his tendencies again. I think
that's a big part of it. Cause what I've seen with Bogosian is I didn't think he's been playing that bad this year. And I guess you kind of preface that with like, it's not like the third pairing has been bad. It's just like, clearly it's the odd one out. And, the last few games, Bogosian hasn't looked that great. I just think like he's one of the only really stay-at-home guys on this pairing anyways. Like, I shouldn't even say stay-at-home guys on this back end, but the only like true non-puck mover. Like Chisholm can move the puck well, Spurgeon can move the puck well, Faber can move the puck well, Brodin can move the puck well. So like he is just always going to stand out. And it's like, okay, well, since you're not a puck mover, we expect you to like do the defensive zone stuff right. And if you do have a bad game here and there, like it's just louder because you don't make up for it with much else. And I think right now, and especially the last 2 games and the LA loss, obviously in particular, like his mistakes were a little bit louder, obviously a little bit slower than a lot of the guys there. But like you said, eye test wise, because that's where I stand predominantly. I've thought that him and Chisholm look a little bit better, and that's not bias Merrill. Merrill has been okay this year. He certainly hasn't been awful like he's been last year. I don't know. I just think there's just a little bit more, whether it's offense like you highlighted or just a little bit more chemistry. I like the way that they play off each other a little bit more. And maybe that's because Bogosian can just allow Chisholm to skate a little bit and he can hang back. And that's what I really liked in what is actually the right answer here, Brett. It's the Hunt Bogosian pairing that is the right answer. Because everything that I saw that I liked from Bogosian early this season, and and I know it's preseason, but hey, we got a lot of looks with Hunt and Bogosian in the preseason. It was like, yeah, this is Bogosian played his best hockey and has looked most comfortable with Hunt next to him. And I know it wasn't a huge sample size, but from the good that I've seen from every pairing, that has been my favorite, and there hasn't been as much bad when they're together. And it's kind of like a wish version of that with Chisholm, I find, right? Like Chisholm is just a better player than Merrill and a little bit more offensive, in my opinion. It just has a little bit more offensive skill, in my opinion, a little bit more offensively inclined and just better in that front. So, okay, I see a little Hunt light in some of the play and some of their chemistry from what I saw earlier in the season with Hunt and Bogosian.
Yeah, like for me, like I don't think it's been bad enough where the team is going to waste the money or the roster spots or forced to put someone on waivers to call Hunt up. But like in my mind, like I don't really think he can be that much like worse. But like I think what Hunt can do, like we saw it in preseason, like he's not afraid to shoot the puck. Like he looks like he has some good offensive instincts. So like I feel like this third pair, they just need a little bit more. Like sometimes you have to help create offense from the back end. Like I think we've seen that at times from Chisholm. Like I think he's got a really good idea of when to kind of jump into the play, like when not necessarily in the rush, but even the offensive zone. Like, hey, I know at this point I can move down the wing. It's an okay time to do it. Like it feels to me he's got a good grab on that. And like my biggest gripe with Bogosian is like he'll just have like these shifts where it's just like his brain just seems like it shuts off. Like there was a play, it's just one that sticks out to me a couple nights ago. Like the Wild were kind of like hemmed in their zone for like, it was like 30 seconds. It wasn't like a whole shift. And like they finally got the puck and it went on Bogosian's stick. And he had like two guys skating through the neutral zone that like easily could have gotten a pass, taped the tape, and those guys could have sent it in the offensive zone, dumped it in, got a change. Instead, he just like flipped it over everybody and got called for icing. Like I was like, well, why would you not pass that or try? Like, and it's just like little things like that where he'll like chip pucks open spaces instead of finding teammates. Like he hasn't looked great in the penalty kill and limit opportunities, but I think that's more of a team issue than a him issue. But yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. It's just the numbers haven't supported that he's been great, but like it really hasn't for any.
I think the passing can definitely get better because usually he's just like the first pass guy. Anyways, it's not like he's leading.
And he's a good skater too. Like just
he is especially for his size.
Yeah, like just skate a little bit even. Like, see if you can create some time.
We got a whole week to that he's just in a little bit of a funk. And maybe attribute it to just the back and forth, players on his other side there, on his pairing. If the penalty kill gets fixed and he's a big part of that, I feel like we overlook a lot of this stuff and go, well, at least he's dominating on the penalty kill. Because again, he's that odd, and every team needs a defensive. He's that odd defenseman that just doesn't move the puck at all, whereas all the other guys can, even if that's not their like skill. The little things are going to stand out in his case when he's not doing, I guess kind of even back to just like penalty kill stuff, like the basics, right?
Yeah, and it was nice to see him get the goal last night, like see him jump up on the play, call for a puck, beat the goaltender.
Yeah, that was nice. It's ironic that like the shining star of the one bright spot of that game was
and then those two just got like just completely lost on like 2 goals later in the game. So it's
so it's kind of moot.
The Lord taketh and the Lord giveth. It just that's the way it goes. But so I don't know what the best answer is. Still, I think like to me, like obviously they seem pretty set on Bogosian as their number 5. So like either choose Merrill or choose Chisholm, and it's like let that pairing play for 4, 5, 6 games and like see if it works. Give them time to get used to each other.
They just can't move on from Merrill, dude. They just can't. They can't do it.
I don't think Merrill's been bad. Like I don't like.
But at this point, it's like you got a log jam back there. You just use Hunt and Chisholm. Like you got 2 guys. Goodbye, Merrill. Thank you for your services. Why are you still here?
Yeah. So conversation.
Only Russo knows why he's still here.
Yeah, and he said he'll tell me once he retires. So I'm waiting for that day. But one more topic I wanted to
Brett wants you to retire, Russo. You heard it here first.
The last thing I want to talk about, and this wasn't something I was really thinking about talking about until after the game last night. The Wild have recalled Mikey Milne from Iowa, who's been pretty consistent to start the year. I think he's got like 8 points in 11 games.
One of the
down there.
only younger guys that's been like, okay, thank you. Somebody's stepping up here and like separating themselves from the pack.
Yeah, and he's a player that we talked about, I think, on the Sota pod of like, hey, this is a guy that could like make an impact sooner than you probably think he will. Because I think he was a little bit older in his draft year, but like just has like kind of this game that just kind of fits kind of a bottom 6 role. Like I always thought of him very similar, like Connor Dewar. Like I think they do a lot of things similar, like just energy. Like he's not huge, he's smaller, 5'10", but like he's a solid player and he's earned his way up here. And
one of the few guys who actually had like a decent season last year.
Yeah,
like only a -1, which actually means something when you look at Iowa stats last year and everybody being like
the fact he's a +2 this year, I think is notable. We talked
that too, right?
I mean, they've played better as of late. I think they've won like 3 or 4 in a row now. It seems like they're finally finding a groove. It just took us trashing him on the podcast last week to get there. That apparently acts as a wake-up call. But long-winded way of saying is they called this guy up and Russo kind of hinted like, yeah, he could probably make his debut on this upcoming road trip. And it seemed like Hines kind of hinted at, and I was like, who could that be? Like, Brat, Lauko, like, no, they're playing fine. Like, it hasn't been great, but I was like, okay, like obviously not Freddie. Freddie's like actually
Freddie's
probably
been really good. Yeah.
He's on is it a 5 or 6 game point streak now? Like he is ever since that Pittsburgh game, like he has just been awesome.
Yeah.
Like really happy for Freddie because I think last year he was dealing with injury and just I think the mental of losing a mentor as his coach and stuff, but he's looked really good. So it wasn't going to be him. And I was like, I don't think Milne's going up to the second line. And like Johansson hasn't been bad. He's just been Johansson. So it's like, okay, is it Foligno? No, captain probably not scratching him. So I was like, all right, so who is it? And as I'm thinking about this, all of a sudden Russo's like, I think it's Trennan. And I was like, all right. Well, so I was like, all right. So what I want to do here was just kind of do the numbers, show that Trennan's, worth being scratched. And my conclusion to preface this is I still really don't know after looking at it. It just kind of depends on, I don't know what the management's expectations of him were, because to me, he's met my expectations, but I didn't like the contract to start with. Thought it was too much money, but to dive into it, he has no goals, 1 assist, 11 shots, 34 hits, 1.14 individual expected goals, 3 minor penalties, including a double minor and 1 drawn penalty. That's kind of like his lone contributed stats. 46.1% Corsi for, so shot attempt share. That's 3rd worst among Wild forwards, but that it has only resulted in 1.43 expected goals against, which is actually 3rd best on the team. So he's just basically spending all of his time in the defensive zone, like forcing teams to shoot from the blue line, getting the puck out of the zone, and then like going off for a line change. Like that's what him and Foligno have done all year. Like both of them have like all these numbers for both of them. Like I think Foligno has 2 goals and 1 assist, but Foligno has like 2 goals on 4 shots. I think he's like 50% shooting. So like even fewer, but I think for me, like the coaches want to see more out of him offensively. And I think we talked before, like you can have a 3rd line that plays shutdown defense through extended time in the offensive zone and forechecking, and then a line that defends well. They're defending well, but the offensive zone time has been like non-existent. And like, it's not like Trennan's been a world beater offensively. Last 3 seasons, 24, 17 points. So,
well, I mean, look, even when Colorado acquired him, he only got 3 points in the last 16 games there, 1 point in 12 right here, 10 games in the playoffs last year too. You know what I mean? Like, and I know that was like pretty, well, I guess kind of similar, like new system, new team. It's kind of the same with the Wild right now. I've thought like he's finally like his skating has improved a little bit from kind of a slow start this year, and kind of like what you said, he's not playing poorly. This might like he's playing to his strengths. Like, sure, the Wild probably want a little bit more offense out of him, because who doesn't from a forward that you're paying,
I think that's the problem. It's like you can't have a $300.5 million player who's a one-trick pony. Like, great, you can play defense.
And it's like he's doing what they brought him here for perfectly. It's just like there's not even like a little bit of the extra that you expect in a forward in the National Hockey League, a 27-year-old who, I don't care if you're 4th line or 3rd line. Like, this ain't the fucking 80s 4th line where like you're going out there to scrap and that's it. Like, no, he does so much out there. And like what you said, where he'll force the puck into the neutral zone and then just skate off. Well, even when he forechecks, like he'll forecheck, battle for it in the corner, pass back to the blue line, and or send it around the boards and get the fuck off. Like, it's like he's never involved in the play. And if he is, it's like it's not memorable because they're not cycling or doing much. If anything, it's like Foligno will power his way to the net, and you know, right. Trennan's again just kind of will skate back outside the blue or outside the circle and wait for the change, wait for the first line to come back on.
Yeah, it's just kind of like frustrating because like we knew the Wild needed some forward help in the offseason, and we're like, all right, they should probably go out and get a top 6 forwards. They can slide someone in with Eck and Boldy, and they didn't. We're like, oh great, we got Trennan. And I was like, well, I'm optimistic. Like this guy forechecks really defends well, and like he's not like known as a goal scorer, but like he has 41 goals in the last 3 seasons. Like that's what does that come out to? Like 13 a season. Which, like, that should be 1 goal every, I don't know, like 6 games, somewhere in there. And he's got 0 in the first, whatever now. 11,
and you think playing with Foligno, there's some, you know, there's some opportunity, right?
Well, anything like Gaudreau, Hartman.
Well,
like,
Gaudreau too, actually, or Hartman, yeah. No, that's the thing. And maybe get some more reps with Hartman. Maybe it sparks something. We'll see.
So I think the scratch is probably just more so like a wake up call. Like, hey, you've done some, but we need more. Like, we need you to elevate your game. Like, I think maybe it just seems he almost like he's playing too comfortable, right? Like in a new system, trying so hard not to make a mistake. Like, hey, take a chance on a shift. Like, try to get in the offensive zone. Put a puck toward the net. Like, I think they're just looking.
Yeah, and if management more. And the coaches are saying take more chances, then if you take some chances and fail, you can't. You know, they can't. You can't expect them, and then they shouldn't like ream you out for it, right? So there should be not like
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Like you got to at least try, and I think that's that's what
Michael Scott, Wayne Gretzky,
exactly, yeah. So
yeah, So it's just that this is such an interesting case because even if he does get scratched, it's like we're not punishing you, we're giving someone else a look, but we want you to think about this, but like keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Like it's an interesting one.
Like, don't change your game defensively, but like be more offensive. So
yeah,
I think the key for him is like what I'll be interested to see is like obviously I don't think Milne's gonna like replace him. Like they're not chucking Trennan on waiver. There's a guy who's got a 4-year contract. Like I think if anything, we don't know for sure if it's Trennan yet. That's what the speculation is. Like I would not like it wouldn't shock me if it was even Khusnutdinov. But I think if they want a guy that can play center on the 4th line, which I think Trennan can, but.
I've just liked him with Lauko so much, and again, like I like to see more offense from Khusnutdinov, absolutely. But
and I think
it's that same thing where it's like you're doing all the things that we want you to do well. It's like, but like we need some offense. You guys are forwards at the end of the day.
Yeah, like him and Khusnutdinov have been like, if you throw hits out of the window, like they're very like similar in that sense of kind of where they're struggling. So. I'm really interested to see how that all plays out. So if it is end up Trennan and if it's next game or if it's some other point on this trip, and just seeing kind of just how he responds once he inevitably comes back to the lineup after that. So.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it, guys. Jam-packed show. Brett, tell everybody where they can find you, and I will pump your new blog in the live chat. And as always, guys, in the description of the podcast, it's in the description of the YouTube, and Brett is always sharing it on his social media where you can find him.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @B_Marsh92. Twitter is the place to go if you want the Wild stuff. I get my player cards on there. Did start a newsletter this season. It'll come out every Tuesday, either morning or early afternoon. And that's it's just a variety of Wild topics that somehow tie into analytics one way or another. So sometimes we'll talk about the team as a whole. This week we just talked specifically about Kaprizov. It's just kind of whatever I think is interesting in that given week. I'm trying to make it add some variety where like I've talked the last 2 weeks about how they've defended well. I don't want to talk about it for a 3rd straight week. So how can we switch it up? So it's free to subscribe if you like everything I do, the podcast and my player cards and the blog and all that. If you want to be a paid subscriber, you can, but there's no added benefits. It's just a way you can support me. So that's Weekly Wild wrap up. There's links to that. As Issa said in the chat here in the description, and then also the link on my profile on Twitter. And then if you want to give the podcast account a follow on Twitter, that's @WildlyInformed with the O being a 0.
There you go. Swerve, thank you so much for joining every week, guys. Every Friday, the audio version of this drops. A podcast drops every single day on the Sota Pod podcast feed. Find it, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts from. We would honestly stay on longer and talk about the last 2 games, but I got to run. I have a stream literally now. You can check it out in the live chat right here. Invicta FC actually on ABC right now, or CBS, sorry, as well as free on their YouTube channel. It's an all women's MMA league, a bunch of savages, and nobody else shows them some love other than my channel. So going to support the main card here. But Brett, can't wait to have some of our questions answered next week. Awesome show. Find all of the analytical breakdowns on the channel. They're starting to drop on the channel weekly now. So if you just want to be reminded of Corsi, Fenwick, the whole 9 yards, they're all going to be posted on the channel. And obviously all the videos and live streams will be on the Sota Pod as well. So like and subscribe. Brett, last word always goes to you.
That's all I got. Next week, we'll in our Puck Your Opinions section, we will be talking about making a case for Wild players to make the 4 Nations rosters. I think that'll be a really fun discussion, trying to pump the tires for Brodin, Faber, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy to make Team USA, Team Sweden. So if you have any good examples, like outside of the Athletic, of where they've been left off the team and there's rationale, feel free to send that to me, and we'll use some of that just to kind of fight. Ish and I will kind of fire back against the hockey heads of everywhere else. So looking forward to that conversation, and then we'll see what happens in the games and where those games lead us for the rest of the show.
There you go, guys. We'll see you next week. Peace.
Till then, see ya.